2, 3, 4.
East End, West End, all around the town. The kids play ring-a-rosy, London Bridge is falling down. Boys and girls together, me and Johnny Brown. They trip the life fantastic on the streets of London town.
Well, I am delighted to be here with my old friends from the Players, now the Paper Moon Theatre Company. I think we were just saying it's about 20 years since some of us have seen each other.
Dorcas.
And we're here at Wilton's Music Hall, where I'm now working in a different capacity. But I'm thrilled because these guys keep doing the good old music hall songs and do them brilliantly. And I want to talk to Jan first to ask what it is you think about music hall songs that keep them so fresh and alive today.
Well, Dorcas, it's a wonderful genre anyway, and all the songs that were written all those many, many years ago just created what everyday life was about. It was about real things. It was about real people, wonderful characters, and you could go and sing about them. Some were humorous, some were sad. There's so much heart in all those songs that were written. They are a joy to perform. And it just sort of brought the working day life onto the stage, but everybody understood why those songs were written, and it's such, when we go out, the audience joins in, and all the problems in everyday living that we have to put up with now, they all seem to be forgotten, and as soon as the piano starts up and all those wonderful songs, they are a joy to sing, and I hope I can keep doing it forever and ever.
Oh, well, I think you're so right, because of course they were one of the few forms of entertainment, and they're a bit like soap operas, aren't they? They tell you so much about what life was like. I think kids in history ought to sing music hall songs, because I think they really tell you
It's a heritage.
huge amount about what life would have been like in the East End, actually, just where we are now at Wilton's. And one thing that Andy talked about in his act was the humour as well. Yeah. Andy, you're particularly good at those comic songs. What is it about music hall that really appeals to you as a performer?
Well, I think, like you say, that the humour of it was, and Jan has just touched on this actually, the whole point of musical and variety shows is to take you away from the mundane, dreary, everyday life, which, I mean, let's face it, in those days it was a lot more dreary than it is now in the East End or anywhere. We don't need happy songs so much these days, and that's why they're not written anymore. But, in those days, and right through the Depression years up to the wartime, people wanted to be lifted out, had their spirits lifted and just taken out of themselves for a couple of hours and cheered up. And that's what all these songs do. Not all just the silly ones, but the sad ones as well, and the sentimental ones. But the comedy ones are the ones I love, because nobody writes them anymore, and it's just a real dying art, and I think it's very sad, and it's nice that we can keep them going. Yeah.
Which you do extremely well.
Thank you.
Catch this boy, he's a great new talent. Judith, I think that one of the things that I find so appealing about music hall is that they write great songs for women, and you are a fantastic performer. We've worked together when we were much younger, and I was much prettier. You're still lovely. But you I've seen you go from being the kind of the young music hall performer into a really wonderful character actress, and of course you do a lot now. I mean, your profession now is doing the wonderful Gracie Fields act that you gave us today. Do you think that's true, that it's just really good for women, music hall? It's a great leveller, isn't it?
It certainly is. Well, thank you very much for your compliments, Dorcas. Yeah, it is great. I love doing Gracie Fields, but for me, the pleasure coming to somewhere like Wilton's is stepping back in history. I love that, and we've been given a little guided tour of the date when it was built, and it just seems unbelievable to me that we're walking on the same boards of the stage where great music hall performers of the past have appeared, and somehow they're etched out on the very ceiling, and we're working without microphones, and as you're singing you're almost hearing somebody else's voice going back to, because we all follow the history of other performers, particularly in music hall. Who did this number originally? In my case it's Gracie Fields, in your case it's George Formby, Andy, or Mari Lloyd for you, Jan.
Yes.
And I'm sure Mari Lloyd must have worked here.
Oh, I'm sure
yeah,
she did,
yeah.
yes.
And I find that aspect of Wilton's terribly exciting.
Yes.
Well, of course, you're absolutely right, because in its heyday, Wilton's would have seen sort of 1,200 to 1,500 people a night coming through, and the big thing was actually to eat and drink. and be entertained at the same time. And of course, an evening would not be an evening without some humour. And of course, we had fantastic Peter John performing today. He's wonderful. Oh, what? Dapper, witty, and I just want to say I also had the pleasure of working with Peter many years ago, and he hasn't changed. And Peter, you know, it's a very brave thing to get up there and do all that patter, which you do so brilliantly, and it just adds that variety side to it. Do you want to tell us a little bit about some of your favourite music hall numbers that you do in your repertoire?
Well, yes, I think it's nice to find a music hall number and kind of try and make it your own in the gags or whatever you put in it and the way you present it. And I think that's quite a challenge, rather than just recycling again and again what people may have seen before. But also, can I just also say about what has been said before, appearing here, having venues that you can appear and do your musical stuff in is wonderful, and it's absolutely wonderful, I'm sure we'd all agree, to be here at Wilton's. Absolutely. Which I believe is the oldest music hall in the world, and so one is aware of that tradition, as people have said, because I think just as much as Shakespeare or Restoration comedy or whatever it may be, music hall is part of our British tradition, and it's wonderful that that's still kept going by the venues where one can do it, and a new audience is all the time learning about it. So whereas kids used to sing, Judith, I remember years ago, used to sing a thing of kids used to sing in the playground. They don't seem to do that anymore, and a lot of things will therefore be lost. So it's nice that we're able now still to pass on to a younger audience perhaps all those traditional wonderful songs, whether lyrical or comical or whatever it may be, and long may that happen, and long may people want to employ us.
Yes. Yeah, hopefully. I'm sure they will. And of course, music hall wouldn't be music hall without the chair, and we're really fortunate today to have one of the best chairs I think that I've ever worked with, the lovely Johnny Dennis, who has come back onto the stage after a little absence, and I think was as debonair and charming as ever. Johnny, did you enjoy today's performance?
It was a wonderful experience. Moving, affecting. I'm getting emotional now talking about it. Oh. And
that's my fault.
It's very special. I get very affected by ambience of theatres, and this is a magical place. It is a privilege to be here. And the funny thing about being the music hall chairman, in those days, we're talking about 1,000 people doing their thing. But the chairman, who was actually at the front of the theatre, right at the front in the stalls, facing the audience, his job basically was to sell more booze. And that was primarily his thing. Keep order. When he used to say order, order, he meant order more booze, or order more food. So his job was the link between the manager, and sometimes he was the manager of the theatre. His role really has been elaborated by Leonard Sachs in the Good Old Days show, and that really wasn't really the métier for what it was. The main job was to get the acts on as quickly as possible in the time, and if there's something went wrong, he was called the chairman's song. He would then sing a song. But I don't look upon it as being the most important part. The artist's the most important part. My job is really to keep the show running on time and keep the audience as informed of what's going on as possible, and hopefully not too many mistakes. And we all make mistakes. I mean, there's been some wonderful mistakes where people didn't, either don't come on or a costume malfunctions, and then you have to fill in, But those are by the by. But all I can say is I echo everybody has said. Today has been a very special day, and we're very privileged. And the outside, you probably can't hear, but there are people outside enjoying the evening air, and they're still buzzing of the show they've seen. If you've done nothing, we've entertained them.
Thank you very much, Johnny. And as Johnny would say, order, order. I think I owe you all a big drink, and we should go and boost the profits in the bar immediately. Thank you very much indeed. Goodbye. Wipe a tear, baby dear, from your eye. Though it's hard to part, I know I'll be tickled to death to go. Don't cry, don't sigh.
There's a silver lining in the sky. Bonsoir, old thing, cheerio, chin chin. Now poo toodaloo, goodbye. Bonsoir, old thing, cheerio, chin chin. Now poo.